We have covered a lot this year, the increasing problems of funding for local councils, and in many cases, some going as far to try and desperately avoid bankruptcy, like we've talked about Leeds, the situation going on Leeds, and then you've got sort of like Nottingham, Birmingham, Coventry, and a number of other councils skirting the shores of bankruptcy purely for the fact that they have not had the money from the central government while being told to do more with it ever increasing less. And they know about this. Michael Gove has even said, yeah, maybe we should do something about this. But this isn't just affecting, as we've talked about, Labour run councils, it's affecting Conservative councils. And we've gone over a couple of times Conservative councillors complaining about the fact that they do not have the money to run their councils or provide the services that a council should have. So the question now becomes, what should be done about it? And shockingly enough, there is something here. Now we're going to see what this idea exactly is from Conservative Home, and obviously this guy Cameron Smith is from Onward, which, if you may remember, is the Michael Gove backed group preparing for sort of life after the next general election. I don't think you'll see too much of them till after that, but they are there and they are preparing. And they have been trying to sort of build up a movement to look beyond the next general election. What do we want to do? Do we need to sort of redefine the entire Conservative movement? And this is the movement that Michael Gove is heavily connected with. So we'll see what they've got to say, what ideas they are trying to sort of put forward. But initially, as the title says, that council funding should be reformed to empower councillors to make a real difference. Now, of course, that sounds good. That sounds good, but the question is the proof then in the pudding? How does it get reformed? What are councillors being empowered to do to make that real difference? It sounds good, but what's the actual policy that Onward is going to put forward to try and solve what they see as a crucial issue? So we'll see what it gets advanced in this, and whether at the end of this article I agree with sort of the proposal, or at least the policy that would be put forward. But at the moment, heck, more power to councils. Absolutely. I've said before, I think one of the things we should be looking at is local councils a lot more. I've said before, local councillors should get paid. I think that would be a huge, a huge benefit to getting more good people being councillors, because now they're getting paid to do the job. And as we've always said, you go to a local council, what do you see? It's predominantly old people or people who, well, run businesses and can basically afford to go and do the whole councillor thing. And it's very, very rarely you see young people or sort of people in the 20s or 30s or even 40s, sometimes even in their 50s, on these councils. And yet, a lot of people, if you look at when they complain about their council, they tend to be within those age brackets because there's no one on the council representing their sort of age view or their views. And then, of course, you get the problem of people don't engage with their local council. They don't go to council meetings. They don't know who their local councillor is. So, it can be almost an uphill battle sometimes in many cases. But anyway, we're going to have a look at this idea. Is it a good idea? Is it, when you actually sort of start to hear the details, do things break down? Now, I am highly skeptical because the Conservatives giving power away when especially Conservatives are the most centralized um government wanters in the UK. Like, they want to sort of centralize all power in Westminster. They really don't want to sort of give more power away. We've talked about how numerous times, even though we've seen devolution for, like, combined sort of mayoral authorities, sort of here in Yorkshire, there's now 4 different combined mayoral authorities. They have been very, very unwilling to give away more powers to these combined mayoral authorities, but yet that was the idea, that you would give more power to these to these places. I mean, look at South Yorkshire, the combined mayoral authorities, or SIMCA, as it's sort of known as its little acronym. It took ages for its own, to get those powers to be in South Yorkshire. But there you go. So anyway, let's find out. Is this nice fluff and then no substance, or is there actual some proper substance that might actually be shockingly good? Because, as I've said, empowering councillors to make a real difference, I think we can all agree to that. But what reforms, what to do exactly, and how a councillor is going to make a real difference. So let's find out, shall we? What Cameron Smith has to say. Um, so but before we do that as well, please remember, again, hit the like, share, and subscribe button. And again, links down below. There's the Pony Club, there's the One Off Station link called Buy Me Coffee, etc., etc. All that below. We can help support the channel. And of course, like I say, click on the like, share button. That helps out the channel as well. So, as always, let's crack on with this. So, why on earth do you want to be a counsellor? That's the number one question family, friends, and colleagues have asked me since I decided to stand as a counsellor in my area 2 years ago. It's a fair challenge, and it's not one I asked myself on my 3rd night in a row in a long council meetings during a full-on work week with a pregnant wife waiting at home. The answer is a simple one, though. Councillors can improve people's lives, or at least they should be able to. And bear in mind, he's just pointed out one of the big obstacles that stops people being counsellors. The fact that you still have to have, a full-time job as well as being a counsellor on top of that. It involves a lot of work. And yet, because council meetings are run in the evening, again, done predominantly so that they can try and attract more, people in it. But if you paid councillors a decent wage, then you could have these meetings done during the day, or at least predominantly done during the day, and then have sort of the more later evening as well, where people can come and see it. There's a lot of stuff that could be done to really help sort of improve the engagement with local councils. So let's see what else he's got. So the days of genuinely transformative councils, like the one Joe Chamberlain led over 100 years ago, are now gone. Under him, Birmingham cleared the slums, fixed the city's water and gas systems, built libraries and an art gallery. Well, again, that was because they had the power to do so, but those powers over time got taken away from councils. So are you going to give them back that for like water and power? We'll see. Like I say, we'll see what reforms he's putting forward at the end. Today, of course, the city's council is bankrupt. London's government doesn't live up to its predecessor either. The old London County Council ran over 140 hospitals, built 6 bridges, 3 tunnels, and built Europe's largest council housing scheme after the First World War, and Sadiq Khan can't even reopen Hammersmith Bridge. Again, examples of councils when they used to have a lot more power than they had. But what are you going to do to give those powers back? How are you going to sort of do that? So this isn't to say that councillors can't achieve things. When I'm a councillor, the authority has built over 2 new libraries, opened a cinema, and while others have closed facilities. But council's hands are tied by an ever-present grip of Whitehall, and England's creeping centralisation continues apace when it comes to council purse strings, even though no government has done more to empower towns and cities than the Conservatives over the last 13 years. Really? What what are you gonna do? What exactly have you done to empower these towns and cities? But please cite your examples. Anyway, a struggling layer of local government remains below the many new metro mayors and devolution deals, which now cover more than 60% of England, and this steady stream of decentralisation is laying the groundwork for levelling up outside of London, except you haven't really done that. Where ambitious mayors like Ben Houchen, you mentioned Ben Houchen as a good example of a metro mayor. Bear in mind, it is Conservative home. I think Andy Burnham's done far more work as a metro mayor. And to give him his credit, Dan Jarvis did do a lot of good work here in South Yorkshire as the regional metro mayor as well. But anyway, back to it. So mayors like Ben Houchen are getting things done. Oh boy. We'll see if he can win his next election or not. That'll be interesting. And these positions are even enticing business leaders like Andy Street and former ministers like Andy Burnham. Much like Birmingham has inspired 2 generations of Chamberlains to become councillors, London drew an ex-Foreign Secretary, Lord Rosebery, to becoming its chairman of its county council. But beneath these deals sit district, county, and metropolitan councils in desperate need of revival. So, in 13 years, why hasn't your government actually done anything to help those places? England's councils currently face a perfect storm. Inflation is driving up the prices of services, while pressures from the cost of living and the pandemic have pushed up demand. There is an increasing funding crisis for children in care, and some placements now costing over £10,000 a week, where foster families can't be found or even specialist help is now needed. Schools' transport spending has now tripled to £1.1 billion in a country, and rural councils are up, and more children are now eligible for education. Health and care plans asking for taxis more often than minibus to get to class. Some individual child placements cost over £1 million. Fewer understand that an entire street's council tax contributions could be spent on helping one pupil, not filling a pothole or emptying bins. And that is true. I will say that now. That actually, he makes a fair point that a lot of people really don't realize where their council tax has gone. Instead, they would rather, if you've ever seen a council, or you can go on to any council website or even your local council's website, and you can see numerous numbers of people complaining about councils not spending money to sort of fix potholes. When he puts it right, Barnsley, we've got a special school that is heavily funded by the council, and a lot of that funding goes to help children get to get to school, especially like these very severe special needs children, which the school sort of caters for. That's a fair point. But at that point, I would also say that the central government does need to be stepping up and helping to make sure that gets funded as well. Or maybe there's other things that we can do to sort of help fund those, not just from taxes. Maybe there's other ways maybe we could find to to sort of do or sort those in some way, shape, or form. So, council chiefs whisper about this dire situation, but there is little public acknowledgement of just how bad it is. Oh, I talk about this all the time. I think if you watch my channel, you probably know how bad the situation is. Trust me, it's bad. As we've covered a lot on this channel before. County councils are over 600 million overspent, while London authorities are over 400 million in the red. A BBC analysis showed that councils face a 5.2 billion shortfall by 2026. After a decade of reduced government grants, council income is 21% lower in real terms of in terms, despite local authorities raising 30% more in council tax. The upcoming local government funding settlement must be generous to stop a wave of authorities going bust. And yeah, who is it? Who is being the responsible party for a lot of those councils going into that position? Ultimately, it's been this guy's government. And you don't see the acknowledgement of how bad that has really been. But he said, oh, in over 13 years, we've improved the situation monumentally for these towns and cities. Don't think so, my friend. I don't think so. And yet you're acknowledging just how more generous you want the government funding to be. So, the direction of travel is clear. Whitehall's want councils to be largely self-funded, with grants to aid deprived areas. This is a great idea in theory. Oh no, that would not be a great idea at all. Councils cannot be ultimately self-funding because council tax is pretty much determined almost exclusively by how many people are in the area. So of course cities are going to get a lot more. Then of course, then what about the demand that's in maybe in these places, in these cities, in these towns? What if the demand for certain services outstrips the need for the tax in these some of these places? That idea that should be dead on arrival. The idea that councils should be sort of self-funding, that should be dead on arrival. That is not going to really work. But he continues. So it would mean that councillors could make real decisions to raise taxes or to improve local services or keep them low and save residents money. But in practice, authorities are hamstrung. Again, why not give them the power to do that? I think councils should be able to look at their funding. Where can they maybe raise council taxes? Maybe from certain cities, you just seen Manchester introduce a tourist tax, and that tourist tax is being used by Manchester to fund attractions, events, you name it. I've been to Manchester 3 times this year, and I think I've paid an extra I think it's like £1.50 of this tax. So that's like what 3 450 I've paid to Manchester's events or visitor attractions, etc. Sort of this year. I don't mind that. I think that's fine. If it's going to go towards stuff and put towards stuff like that, I think that's fine. I don't have a problem sort of paying that tax. I think that's actually kind of a good tax. You see this quite a lot in Bruges. I went to Bruges there. They have a tourist tax as well, which goes towards sort of restoration of like the city, sort of its architecture, its sort of museums and things like that. I find that fine. I've got no problem paying that. But yeah, the whole idea that what he's put there I'm not 100% sure. I think, this is an idea where central government really needs to be in there, and central government needs to be able to sort of trust councils to get on and do what's necessary. But ultimately, you've had a government for the past 13 years that has done the exact opposite of that. Anyway, continues. So, with caps on council tax, a long delayed fair funding review, and no firm plans to fully devolve business rates, the government is asking councils to pay for themselves without the tools to do so. It is unsustainable. It's not just the question of government asking councils to sort of, fund themselves. It's that the government is saying, we're cutting large chunks of your funding. We've lost things like the EU development grant, which was given to areas by need, not local governments having to like compete against each other for an ever decreasing amount of funding money. We've seen councils have to spend more on getting advisors, bid writers in to try and get a pot of money, which then they have not won. The idea that sort of the Conservative government has been good, or that leveling up has somewhat been successful. No. Um, I sort of think again, councils should be able to sort of raise money through taxes to sort of help fund local services, etc. But they should not be entirely self-funding. And at least he admits that that is at least unsustainable. And at least he can admit that. But we'll see what it is. So, fixing local government isn't a vote winner or even a top public priority. It should be, but unfortunately, I agree with them, it's not. But it is essential to delivering more homes, economic growth, and regeneration, and the core to the Conservative principle of localism. Give more control and fairer settlements. Councils could cut local taxes, bring back small businesses, invest in preventative social services, and ultimately power would rest with communities to kick out wasteful councillors and reward the prudent. Again, wasteful councillors and prudent councillors. Prudent councillors to, again, this conservative mindset would be, as you said, to keep local services low to save residents money. Again, this is sort of the conservative dream of wherever you see, local conservative councillors. Of course, we forget, or at least this guy's very forgetful, that some of the first councils to go bankrupt, and this is a number of years ago now, were conservative councils because they went full austerity and they austerity themselves into bankruptcy because they followed that conservative mantra and they had to be bailed out back in like 2016. But this guy seems to not remember that and forget that that was a thing that happened. Of course, they reversed those policies, um, but still, you've got conservative councils who are like, yeah, we're getting an ever decreasing amount of money from government. Um, it's completely unsustainable for us. Not alone just other different local authorities. This has been on to the conservative central government, and yet conservative councillors thinking that their own conservative government is going to sort of come and save them. No, it is really a fantasy on this. Um, anyway, let's finish off. So these overdue reforms would cement the Conservatives' record on devolution and could usher in a new generation of town hall radicals who, like me, just want to make lives better for their communities. Um, Ultimately, the two people he has mentioned, Ben Houchen, really has not been, um, shall we say, stellar. Of course, his whole Freeport that he is using, um, should he lose power, Oh, well, that's going to be massively investigated. Of course, Michael Gove has refused to have a public inquiry into what's going on in that Freeport. Andy Street, even though again, this is a guy who is a multimillionaire, um, gone to be sort of the local council for for a region. He is doing a lot to sort of back businesses in that region and has talked about trying to sort of keep HS2 alive. So that is good. And I've said before, the left, there's a lot of people on the left that just cede ground, especially when it comes to sort of business. The left doesn't have a lot to say about business, so it cedes ground to a lot of people on the right who do. So at least in terms of Andy Street, I don't know fully about other things that he's got sort of going on in his area. But at least again, he is trying to keep HS2 alive. Whether he will succeed in that, that's doubtful. I wish he'd have resigned, because him resigning would have had a very powerful impact against Sunak on that front. But overall, what do you want to do? So this guy's whole idea is that you want to give councils more power. That's his central core. That's his central thesis. Well, he's not actually alone in that. Like I say, other local councillors and other even people in the Labour Party have been saying that for years, that councils need more power. They want more authority to be able to do more stuff. You look at the continent, where councils have a lot more power than a UK council. Overwhelmingly, they've done pretty good. They've done pretty well because central government trusts them. Whereas prime example during the pandemic, Public Health England was saying, right, we're ready. We need to go into pandemic mode. We've got all these plans ready to go. We just need your say so. We just need you to approve money and funds. And central government did not do that. And you've seen a lot of people, especially conservatives, even on Conservative Home. Will Atkinson, as you know, we do some of his ramblings, his blogs on here now and again. He wrote an entire blog defending Boris Johnson, saying, why aren't we questioning Public Health England? Where are they? And yet they will be interviewed, just not at this stage. But even in the end, people like Matt Hancock, Boris Johnson were ultimately responsible that stopped Public Health England from performing their jobs, because they would not give Public Health England the leeway, the trust, the money to be able to get on and deliver pandemic funding. So yeah, what this guy is proposing, again, on paper, even when you say it, oh yeah, empower local councillors to make a real difference. Sounds good. In practice, in theory, how are you going to do it? What powers exactly? How far are you going to go with those powers when it comes to sort of things like house building? How does this help when, especially on conservative councils, you see constant battles between NIMBYs and YIMBYs? That's yes in my back gardeners and no in my back gardens. Constantly fighting each other. In fact, not that too long ago, there was a bit of a viral video doing the rounds of councillors arguing over this very thing. Well, yeah, it's honestly it's difficult, but local councillors and being able to make a difference in local councils and giving them more power, I think is something that we should do. And localism isn't just a conservative thing; it is a Labour thing as well, and it's something that we should be talking about and doing, and going into sort of, local communities, speaking to community groups, telling them what localism is and how, this could be, an improvement to sort of councillors. If this is not, as he said, currently a general election winner, then it should be up to um, groups who sort of believe that to sort of fight for that and to push for that, not just from one party, but on a multi-party issue. Because, like I say, in theory, empowering councillors to make a real difference, that's again good on paper, very good thing to say. I do not think you would see anyone really disagree with that power, or at least that saying, or at least seeing that written down on paper. The differences will come, and then the arguments and disagreements and where we can agree will obviously come in the detail, the after part, the lower part, the small print. Like we say, how far should councils go? With the thing that I've talked about, what about rents? If we were to bring in rent control, would this be a UK wide thing? Is the central government gets control of that, or then does this go to sort of regional city mayors, or does it go to local councils and they get to set what rents landlords can charge? Again, big questions, and definitely things that should be looked at, should be talked about. But it's a shame that you get someone from the conservative side who, again, most of what he was saying there, in principle, I agree with, but it's like how you would go on to do that. Where would you go to do that? And of course, he talks about powers, giving more powers. Well, how much powers on house building should local councillors have? If you want to go back to, as he said, he named like the Birmingham City Council, how they did lots of stuff, and sort of the example he gave of like after the First World War, the London councils, but with a massive, biggest sort of social housing. I do not think you would see a conservative government give those powers back. I currently don't think you would probably see a Labour government give all those powers back. But I think that moving forward and saying how things could be better, if central government could come to sort of trust more like local councillors and let them get on with it. But there's a ton of stuff you could do of sort of powers at local levels which should be looked at and could be brought forward. And that there is no reason why this could not become an election winning issue. I don't think there is any reason at all why this couldn't, if this is sort of really fought for and sort of advocated for. But currently, you don't. there's no there is very few movements out there that do sort of advocate for things. You do see these things in some movements, but it seems to be sort of very minor, unfortunately. But there is no sort of big central movement to right. This is how we can improve, local councils, and this is how by improving local councils, this is how we can, make things better for the people who live in those areas. But anyway, as always, thank you very much, of course, for watching. As always, let me know what you think down below. Like I say, nice thing to say, but what exactly does this guy want to do? Oh, you want to empower business rates, council tax? Okay, how exactly are you going to do that? What rates are you going to sort of set? What about where we know, for example, most councils are massively suffering from the ever increasing budget because we have an ever increasing aging population of the social care budget, which most councils is the big issue they are struggling with. But as we say, as always, thank you very much for watching. And of course, as always, we'll see you all next time.